So today we are making a spaghetti squash with bean balls and a raw marinara sauce. So it's not going to taste exactly like the spaghetti and meatballs maybe that you grew up with, but it's still going to cover all of the bases of flavor profile and satiation that will take away your craving for Italian spaghetti and meatballs. We're gonna start with the spaghetti squash. This is a winter squash. Maybe you have seen these in great abundance at your local produce stores. We have fallen in love with spaghetti squash. It is something that is low in calories. So as compared to a traditional pasta noodle with the wheat, it can be very high in calories. It's low in fat and it's very high in vitamins and nutrients and fiber. We have a quick question, a survey from the crowd. What do you think came first, spaghetti noodles or spaghetti squash? So raise your hand if you think spaghetti noodles came first.
One.
So who thinks spaghetti squash came first? Wow, legit. So this one got me a bit because I was confused, but historically, most people believe that the spaghetti noodle came first. People started making spaghetti, I guess, in like 1st century AD, a long time ago. Whereas the squash, originally from Central America, you know, when everyone was conquering and ships were everywhere and they would take things from Central America and ship them all over the world. Squash was one of those things. But it became popularized in China, and 1920s it went to Japan, and by 1930s a guy from Japan became so obsessed with spaghetti squashes he began to market them heavily. He wanted the spaghetti squash to take off, and the spaghetti squash didn't take off until the 20th century when people realized the applicability of using spaghetti squash, and it's low calorie, low fat. You can eat a lot of it and feel full without having to gain more weight. So that was a brief history of spaghetti squash. Maybe it misled some people who thought spaghetti squash came first. I thought the same thing, but historically we have no idea besides what the internet tells us realistically. So.
Which is the sentiment for a lot of things, I guess.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get into preparing it. I'm gonna show you some relatively pro tips on how to make this easy because it can be quite an intimidating vegetable to prepare. If you cut it this way, along this side, when you cook it, the strands of spaghetti will all be cut up because it grows around this way. So we're going to cut it this way, and there's two walls. There's this side and then this side and a big gap in the middle. So if you go straight through, your knife will turn, probably cut your hand off. It can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
So you only have to go in about 1 inch each side, and it's actually pretty easy. So I'm going to cut this in half first. So once it's in like that, if you try to go all the way through, it's going to be problematic. Whereas if you just go round and let the knife do, and you straight through.
Voila. With intuition, I would think that you'd want a big knife and chop all the way through, but they suggest using a smaller knife like we did today to get that inch layer thick. And then it's kind of like carving a pumpkin at this point. You take the seeds out, and look how many seeds are there. It's such an abundant vegetable. We've been saving all of these seeds at home, and we're gonna hopefully have a squash farm next season. So while you're scooping out your squash, if you're working in a team type scenario, you get the oven baked up to between 450, 475, because we're going to be putting the squash in the oven. But you can also cook a squash in a pressure cooker. Cut it in half, put the 2 halves in a pressure cooker, and it only takes 7 minutes, so it's very fast. With this special squash trick that we're doing here, cutting slivers out of it, the squash cooks a lot faster. And if you're feeding many heads, the slivers, if you're just feeding like snack portions, turn out to be like a bowl of spaghetti squash. And it cooks faster in the oven. So that little trick can save you a lot of time if you're feeding lots of heads and you're crunched in time and you really want spaghetti squash. It doesn't have to be such a long time commitment.
You're gonna cut them into slivers just like this. Mm-hmm. Get them onto a baking tray.
You wanna poke holes around the top. I kind of do it in an angular fashion to move with the circle. And the holes will allow it to cook, once again, faster. Like if you think about russet potatoes or potatoes in the oven, you always poke holes in it so it cooks more effectively. We try to reduce the amount of cooked oils that we use in our foods. We're just going to let it cook as it is. The squash is full of natural sugar, so it'll actually brown on its own, which is really great.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna season in the top with Italian seasoning. And garlic. This is an optional step, but keep in mind that the spaghetti squash is relatively neutral in flavor. It is sweet, naturally, but it is a bit bland.
And whatever you put on it will take up all of those flavors and really hold on to them, so you can be very aggressive with whatever you want to flavor this with. We've just used Italian herbs there because this is spaghetti and meatballs replacement, so to pack it in all those flavors. And you'll find that with a lot of plant-based cooking, that if you don't add seasonings and extra tastes, all the vegetables by themselves can often be just taste like vegetables. So, but on the flip of that, they will take on a lot of taste, so get seasoning.
Well, that's our spaghetti squash sliver.
And we're going to put that in the oven
Hypothetically.
for 35 minutes at 450 degrees.
Checking it every 15 minutes. So these are the ones we put in the oven. You can already see they're cooking up really well, and they're starting to brown naturally on their own. We did not add any sugar to them, and they are cooking.
And no oil either.
That's what I meant to say. We didn't add any oil. Now that our squash is prepared and in the oven, we're going to make our bean balls now. I've enjoyed quite a bit of meatballs in my life. But the thing with meatballs is it is meat, and we're a plant-based educational show. And when I eat meatballs, I can feel a bit heavy and full, to an extent that it is uncomfortable. And that is because when you make meatballs, when you're binding them together, you're using flour, breadcrumbs, wheat products, and personally those can make my stomach feel uncomfortable. I do not tolerate wheat well. So our bean balls today are going to utilize different ingredients than meatballs, but they're going to still have the same flavor profile that you would associate with a traditional meatball.
So we're going to start off with black beans. This is going to be the base. You can technically use any bean for this, and when you're going for a meat style replacement, they work very well. So this is just a whole can, drained and rinsed. You can also obviously pressure cook them. So
we're going to be adding oats. This oat mixture has already been made into a flour, so it doesn't have to be pre-pulverized. But if you, whatever type of oats you have, quick oats, rolled oats, whole oats, oat flour, whatever, just get 3/4 of a cup in there. We're going to be adding cashews, our favorite. So with the beans and the cashews, this is going to be a pretty high protein ball. And we just love how the texture that cashews provide to every dish.
Yeah, big cashew cans.
Big cashew cans.
Especially when you can buy them in bulk as well.
They're very affordable in bulk on certain websites. We're going to add the flavor enhancers now.
This is an onion that we prepared earlier. So the recipe calls for 1/3 of a cup. I don't truly know what that means in onion, so I just put half an onion in. That usually seems pretty good. And you can keep this, because this is all going to be blended, you don't have to slice or dice it too much. I'm going to get the onion in there, and this is going to really help with the flavour. And there's also a good amount of liquid in there, which will help it all bind up together. We've got liquid aminos.
Yeah, so we don't have a liquid aminos today, which is fine. We have traditional soy sauce. This is just a way to add a salty, unexpected flavor and a little bit more liquid to the bean balls. If we were using liquid aminos, that is a different type of condiment that you can find in health food stores that is high in protein, less salt, less preservatives, straight from the soybean or the coconut.
Yeah, but if you don't have it, you make do with what you've got.
Definitely.
So get that in there next. And next we've got tomato paste, tomato paste here in the soup. Get that in there.
So when you're cooking, a good thing to note is that you want to match flavors through all of the substances. So we've got tomato paste in here, which is going to complement the raw marinara sauce that we're making. You want to mix things into different parts of your meal so all the flavors match really well.
Next up, we're going to season this. The seasoning is a critical part of this. This is how you're going to pack this with the flavors and make it taste like Italian meatballs. So talk us through what seasonings we've got, Catherine.
Oregano, or oregano, is that what you say?
Origami.
Origami.
Oregano.
So you may think like, oh, these just little herbs is just adding taste, but actually herbs in this form are actually very concentrated. So any dried herb that you put into your meal, you're also getting the health benefits associated with it. So oregano is good for a myriad of different things, but it's very good for your respiratory health. There's a lot of themes in this recipe that are good for your respiratory health. The onions are good for your respiratory health. The oregano is good for your respiratory health. So it's interesting that we crave spaghetti and meatballs around this time of year when the fall season's coming. Our body's calling for those foods that reinforce our respiratory system, and these are foods that do just that.
Never thought of that, you know.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. So lesson for me to...
We don't have to add basil, but you could add basil. Go for it.
I just like the ones that I say different because I've got something to say that's funny then.
So this is fennel. You can get fennel powder or fennel seeds, and it may not be the most popular spice in your pantry. I know that it's not one I've always gone to, but fennel is a traditional spice that you add into meatballs. So it's gonna like tick that box in your head of like, I'm eating traditional Italian. This is great. Thyme is next. Thyme is very high in vitamin A and C. We all love our vitamins.
But if you get into the habit of cooking with herbs for more than just taste, you'll see a positive impact on your health, I'm pretty sure of that. This is going to go into your blender or food processor, and it's going to turn into this
mush.
The consistency you're looking for is where it like won't fall off your spoon really like this. If it's too runny, you'll need to add more dry ingredients. If it's too dry and too thick, you're going to add even more tomato paste or water. But that's the consistency you're looking for. We
use the 2-spoon method. Scoop with 1 spoon and then scoop it out with the other spoon and just kind of form it into a ball.
Yeah.
Nice. It looks like kind of like a
It
cookie,
does look
honestly.
like a meatball.
And then this way your hands stay clean. All right, so once these balls are formed, you're gonna get them in the oven with your squash, and they should be done around the same time.
Yeah.
Close, very close.
When my mum used to make spaghetti, Kate's mum too, the sauce would be a aspect of be cooking all day, you know.
Yeah.
You'd be smelling it, meatballs later. And that's part of the experience, but we're gonna go for a raw sauce. Why are we doing that? With
Feel Better Eating, we believe in incorporating raw elements into each meal that we make. We are going to be making the raw marinara sauce that I have been really inspired to learn within this past year, because I didn't know that you could just eat raw marinara, but it actually is very flavorful and delicious. So
what's going in it?
We're gonna start with 4 Roma tomatoes. So I think Roma tomatoes are more Italian, and I think they're used mostly in Italian dishes because, I mean, listen to the name, Roma tomato. What's your best Italian accent of Roma tomato?
Roma tomato.
That was good. Next we're adding sun-dried tomatoes. Oh, we love sun-dried tomatoes. You can also make your own sun-dried tomatoes at home in the dehydrator or in the oven on really low heat. We recommend anytime you get the chance to make your own sun-dried tomatoes to do that, because it's super easy, super delicious. When we make a pan of them, we almost want to eat the whole pan. Because when you get sun-dried tomatoes from the store, sometimes they can have extra ingredients in it that just are unnecessary. So because these are so fresh, they'll add preservatives to it, or they'll add extra oils that are not really necessary. So just make sure you know what you're buying when it comes to sun-dried tomatoes. Find the freshest and the least additive version of it.
Like these ones are good.
Yeah. Next we're going to be adding a bell pepper because it's red. Everything is red because we're making a marinara sauce. The bell pepper will be good for just a different flavor going on. It will add thickness to the sauce, and we love peppers because they're so high in vitamin C and vitamin A. These are technically optional ingredients. We like to add olive oil for extra nutritional benefits and honey for extra nutritional benefits, but some people don't believe in using oil or honey, and we respect that, but we're gonna use it today. Just is what it is. I like how olive oil adds that layer of creaminess in it.
Yeah, I think it's good.
And the honey is gonna add sweetness to the sauce.
Just banging that in.
Yeah, just eyeball it.
Eyeball it.
Use your intuition. Cooking is about using your intuition as much as it is recipes.
And testing.
We have to incorporate more Italian seasonings because this is an Italian dish.
Okay.
So we're actually using the basil this time. Top Italian herb, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
When you think about margarita pizzas, if you think about making anything Italian, you want to include basil. Basil is really good for your nervous system and relaxes you, so maybe that's another thing that draws us to spaghetti and meatballs. The basil in it relaxes us and be like, oh, I'm so fulfilled from this. What we were talking about, how seasoning determines what the meal is. If you make this base and you just instead use cilantro and cumin and paprika, chili powder, smoked paprika, you've got a salsa.
Yeah, you've got a
sauce.
So yeah.
The Italian seasonings is what makes this a marinara sauce.
Right, we're gonna get that on the blend.
Yeah, we're ready to blend that.
Right, should we plate this up?
Let's go for it. Well, see, oh, look, it just comes off. That's incredible. And it comes out in this fibrous material that looks like spaghetti. Yeah, so you basically just scrape it off the sides the best that you can. And I think in terms of presentation, this is really nice. Like if you're served, this looks like a high-end restaurant where you put it all, when you put it all in the middle, it's like basically a serving of spaghetti, but just right here in a bowl. And you can obviously take off the sides if you don't want it there.
These are the meatballs after they've been cooked.
And they look more like cookies, but like we said, this is a plant-based alternative,
Yeah.
so our bean balls are just gonna be very flavorful.
And you could roll, if you wanted them to be fully spherical, you could just roll it in your hands. The only reason it's got those peaks is because of the spoon method, so
Yeah.
dirty hands or round balls.
You gotta make those choices in life.
Get that sauce
A little bit of
on.
sauce, not too much.
Oof.
Spread it around. Whoa. We've got a ball on the run.
What are you doing, 3 or 2?
Presentation wise, probably 3, right? Oh, this is just in case you want, you know, because we don't have Parmesan or mozzarella, so to say. You could get plant-based versions of those, but we're just gonna sprinkle a little bit of nutritional yeast that has garlic powder on the top of it, just to get that cheesy vibe.
And then the last ingredient, these are sunflower microgreens. These were harvested 4 hours ago, which makes them very, very fresh. And these are going to be a nice raw touch on the top of this dish. These are very, very nutrient dense. They're going to help with the digestion, and they taste good as well. They've got like a nutty taste to them. So we're going to layer those on. And a big part of our cooking style, how we feel better eating most meals, is if you can add any raw element after you've cooked. We don't cook that much, but now that fall here, we're cooking more. But if you can add raw elements like this, you'll find that all of the rest of the food will digest easier, and you'll just feel better after eating it. So we're going to add a handful of
Oh, look
sunflower
at that.
microgreens.
This is probably the most gourmet one I've made so far.
Gourmet.
So this has been spaghetti squash bean balls and raw marinara. It's a plant-based alternative that hopefully, if you try it, would trigger you into thinking, wow, I'm eating something Italian, fulfilling, nutritious, and we had a lot of fun making it, didn't we?
This recipe, as always, is available on our website, feelbetterliving.com. That'll be in the description, or you've got handouts. Catherine, any more to share?
No, I just hope that our show continues to inspire you to get in the kitchen and try cooking and seeing how it can help you feel better eating and living.
Much love, everybody. Peace.
Peace. Thank you, guys.
A big thank you to all of our show sponsors and supporters who make this show possible. The Healthcare Foundation of LaPorte, Grace Learning Centre, Citizens Concerned for the Homeless, and ALCO, Access LaPorte County. We appreciate all of your support.